Once upon a time, in a small town by the sea, there lived an old fisherman with a mustache like a broom. Every day, the fisherman sat by the sea with a frown on his face and fished. His frown was so deep that his eyebrows disappeared into his broom-like mustache, and occasionally he fell asleep. But since you couldn't see his eyes behind all that mustache, the only way you could tell was from his snoring, which was hard to hear over the sound of the sea. The fisherman lived a slow, simple life, one that called to some ancient past. But he did not live in a slow, simple world. When he started fishing as a young man, other fishermen were like him. They sat on the shore and fished using rods. But over the years, they traded their rods for nets, the shore for ships, contented frowns for crowns of salt, all while the fisherman with the broom-like mustache stayed on dry land. The ways of fishing were not the only thing that changed. Tourists came to swim and sunbathe. Rich people rode their yachts out on the water, and loud aeroplanes flew overhead. And all the while, the mustachioed man stayed set in his ways. His lifestyle was unprofitable, unsustainable, lazy, yet he never cursed the sea for not giving him enough fish. Enough was what he got, and he always got enough. When the fisherman was hungry, the butcher had spare meat, and when his roof needed mending, the builder had spare materials, and anyone who saw him wandering home would invite him in for a cup of tea and a chat, despite the fact that he hardly said a word. The townspeople saw him as an anchor, the one thing that would never change and remind them all how fragile their lives were. The fisherman lived alone and never took a wife or a lover. Over the years, the way people spoke about him changed too. First, he was that way, then queer, then gay, until finally, as times changed and he grew older, people came to accept that that was just how he was, and stopped commenting on it. One crisp winter's morning, the fisherman went out at sunrise to fish. But as he cast his rod into the water, he noticed something bubbling beneath the surface. The bubbling grew and spread like the excretion of an underwater volcano, until finally a huge, bedraggled head emerged from the water, as solid as a mountain. The underwater man had kelp for hair, skin as blue as ice, and a beard that made the fisherman's look like a piece of worn carpet. But the great face showed signs of stress and decay. The eyes were ridden with thick, red veins, the cheeks were covered with barnacles, and a great patch of hair was missing from his head. Still, there was no mistaking this for any other than the great god of the sea, Poseidon. "Old man," boomed Poseidon, "for many years you have fished my seas." The old man wet his lips and cleared his throat. He spoke so rarely now that his voice was no more than a whisper in the morning. "Must you speak so loud?" he said. "I am not that deaf yet." "Ha," said Poseidon. "You see the god before you, that you should fear most, and yet you do not even tremble. Do you accept your death so readily? The fisherman had heard the stories, of course. No man of the sea lived without hearing them from his father, like a chipped bowl passed down generations. Those who took from the sea risked the wrath of Poseidon in equal accordance to what they took. Many a fisherman's wife said goodbye to her husband in the morning, only to never see him again. I have respected your seas more than any other, said the man. I have not tortured your creatures, and I have only taken what I needed to survive. So you think you are better than those who drag nets along my depths and mine my riches. The old man was careful with his words. He knew from tales that Poseidon had a fierce temper, and his arrogance was unmatched. They chose a different path. I was born into this world, set in my ways. If I am to face my death, so be it. Relax, land dweller, said Poseidon. I will not kill you yet. I have a proposition for you. The great god raised an iceberg hand to his face and scratched. The noise was like a saw on a metal chain. A clump of barnacles fell from Poseidon's cheek, revealing a bloody wound beneath. I, too, grow old. We thought it would be lack of belief that killed us, but many things thrive while no one believes in them. Instead, you humans have become like gods and brought us gods to our knees. The fisherman thought back on what he'd seen in his life. He did not claim to be a man of the world, and he had never traveled beyond these shores. But even he could not ignore the changes taking place around him. Rivers that were once clearer than the sky ran thick with oil. Children that once laughed heartily and tripped his steps grew round and rotten-mouthed from imported sweets, and each day the sea offered fewer fish for him to catch. "What is it you need?" said the old man. A wind blew, casting a tangle of kelp over the god's face. From beneath the shadows, his eyes frothed like storm-born waves. "It is much to ask." The old man smiled. "I owe you everything, Father of the Ocean." The people of the town noticed the fisherman's absence, of course, but none knew his name. They had all called him Old Bushy after his mustache. In the weeks following Old Bushy's disappearance, the changes in the sea were remarkable. The trawlers and pleasure cruisers, which once sailed unmolested, met with storm after storm. Swimmers were ordered to stay away, but a few foolhardy were dragged to their deaths. What had once been the town's friend now became a brooding enemy. But those who lived off the ocean redoubled their efforts. They built stronger ships, devised systems to predict the currents, fought bitterly against every storm. Eventually, after several months of drawn-out conflict, the sea seemed to give up and returned to its previous calm. Every now and then, a fisherman would be taken as tribute, but that had always been the contract. And these days, it was very much in the human's favor. Still, something had shifted in the waters. The tides pulled with a bit more vigor, the sun did not pierce past the water's surface, and the fish became slipperier. Whispers passed around town. On a clear night with a full moon, they say, if you sit out by the sea, you might see something beneath the water. At first, you'll mistake it for a bed of seaweed, but look closer, and you might recognize a pair of eyebrows and a mustache pressed together into a frown. He watches and he waits. One day, his day will come, and we will all return to the sea. The end.